YouTube channel. Zulu monarch King Goodwill Zwelithini will address an Imbizo today to call to an end to xenophobic attacks in and around Durban. We also have the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps and DRC Ambassador to South Africa joining us in studio. And we look at women against xenophobia. But first, let's get the day's news with Nindo Mel.
Good morning, I'm Manindo Mal. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. An estimated 10,000 people have started arriving at an Imbizo to be addressed by Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini. The king has been under pressure after his statements on foreign nationals were believed to have fueled xenophobic attacks. King Zwelithini maintains his words were distorted by the media. The Imbizo had initially been scheduled for Curry's Fountain Stadium, but has since been moved to Moses Mabhida to accommodate a larger crowd. Police have acted swiftly after the murder of Mozambican national Emmanuel Sithole. 3 people have been arrested in connection with the murder of the foreigner. The suspects were arrested in Alexandra last night with the help from community members. 35-year-old Sithole was stabbed in Alexandra on Saturday and later died in hospital. The 3 suspects are expected to appear in the Alexandra Magistrates Court today on charges of murder. Meanwhile, President Jacob Zuma will aim to dull xenophobic tensions this week. President Zuma will lead a stakeholder outreach program across the country after cancelling a trip to Indonesia for the Africa-Asia Summit. 7 people, including 3 South Africans, have been killed in the latest unrest. The Justice and Security Cluster told the media in Pretoria that over 1,000 people have been displaced in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. 307 have been arrested countrywide. The 16-year-old survivor of the Van Breda family axe murders in Stellenbosch has retrograde amnesia. According to Marley Van Breda's family, she cannot recall anything about the attack, which claimed the lives of her family earlier this year. Both her parents and older brother were killed at their home at the Zalza Golf Estate in January. Western Cape Police say significant progress has been made in the triple murder investigation. And leaders of the European Union will meet today to discuss what may be the Mediterranean's worst disaster. Over the weekend, around 700 migrants are believed to have drowned after their boat sank off the coast of Libya. Some southern European nations say the bloc's credibility is now at stake. Foreign ministers will meet for the emergency summit to discuss the deaths of the migrants who tried to cross the Mediterranean from Africa. Remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter and send your views to @SABC Newsroom. Sam, over to you.
Thanks, Anine. Now, Police Minister Nkosi Nhleko says an Imbizo called by Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini is a good initiative in terms of government's bid to end the spate of attacks against foreign nationals. Nhleko says police will be on standby for any unruly behaviour. Thousands of people are expected to converge on Durban's Moses Mabhida Stadium today for an Imbizo. It is to be addressed by Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini. It's been estimated that about 10,000 people, including Amakhosi, Zinduna and Amabuto, or regiments, will be attending. The king has been under pressure after his statements on foreign nationals were seen by some as having contributed to xenophobic attacks over the past 2 weeks. The king maintains his words were distorted by the media and he had never encouraged attacks on anyone. The event has been jointly planned by the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Department and the Royal Household. The SABC supports the hashtags #Say No to Xenophobia and #WeAreOne. Now, xenophobic attacks around the country are receiving attention at the highest government level. President Jacob Zuma has cancelled an official trip to Indonesia in order to deal with the matter at home. He visited a makeshift camp in Chatsworth, Durban, where more than 1,000 of displaced foreign nationals are being accommodated. Meanwhile, Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini will address an Imbizo of all traditional leaders at Moses Mabhida Stadium today, following attacks on foreign nationals. SABC's Blaine Herman and Ayanda Mhlongo joins us from the Imbizo. Blaine, good morning. Take it away. Tell us what can we expect today. And I know that you've got a guest or two.
Yeah, very good morning to you, Sam. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, live from the Moses Mabhida Stadium right here in Durban. It is indeed for an important Imbizo, an important gathering in the context of what's been happening over the past couple of weeks, in fact, in Durban and surrounding areas, as well as other parts of the country. Now, the King is going to speak today. King Goodwill Zwelithini is going to address this pressing issue that everybody is concerned about, that is attacks on foreign nationals. Present here today will be traditional leaders. We have government, civil society, as well as, generally concerned citizens wondering what can be done, what sort of solutions can be found in order to put paid to this violence that's been ravaging certain parts of this country. Now, initially, as you mentioned, this event was supposed to be taking place at Curry's Fountain Stadium. It was moved to Moses Mabhida Stadium to accommodate this large crowd that we're expecting. Over 10,000 people coming here, as I said, wanting solutions, wanting to know what's going to be done to stop this violence against foreign nationals. Now, one person that knows a lot about the story inside and out is my colleague Ayanda Mshlongo. She joins me now live. Thank you very much indeed for your time, Ayanda. It has been a rough couple of days, isn't it, for reporters and obviously for those affected, day and night. And I say night, so you've been working the night story because initially we saw these attacks happening at night and obviously looting. Rough time for the city.
Absolutely, Blaine. It has been, you couldn't have put it better, a rough time for the city. In the past 3 weeks, in fact, when the attacks on foreign nationals start, but more, I think, more disturbing were the events of the last 2 weeks where we saw the attacks on the foreign nationals being more vicious and more heinous. Just one incident that comes to mind, Blaine, that we reported on was that attack on the 2 Ethiopians that was set alight in their container. The visuals coming from that, Blaine, in being there was very disturbing for us ourselves as reporters, of course, and I think for the public who then saw those visuals and heard the stories that we were reporting on. It has really been a very intense week for the city of Durban, for everybody that has been involved, from the police, from government, and also for the people of KwaZulu-Natal.
Yeah, where did it start, Ayana? Take us back. What sparked this?
Well, we understand that, Blaine, from people, when the violence started at Isipingo, where were the first attacks, people were telling us, the reporters there, that they were heeding a call that was made by King Goodwill Zwelithini, where the King had said that all foreign nationals, they alleged that the King had said all foreign nationals must be deported back to their countries. Now, of course, later on, the King clarifying that statement, that he did not talk about all foreign nationals in general. He was merely concerned about our porous borders and also concerned about the criminals that were coming from through our borders into our country, committing crimes and then leaving our country or accessing through our borders. That was the concern. We also then learned of a letter that had been sent to the city mayor from local businesses. And in that letter, which I was in possession of through our sources, it stated clearly that they wanted foreign nationals to leave by the 17th of April. So those were the two reasons that we have. Of course, government is still investigating what exactly sparked the violence, and of course who are the instigators and who is behind these attacks on foreign nationals.
It's been really tense here in KwaZulu-Natal over the last couple of weeks. In terms of sentiment on the ground, you've been going out, speaking to foreign nationals, speaking to locals. What's the sentiment? What do they want the King to say today at this all-important Imbizo?
Well, let me first start by the victims, Blaine, being the foreign nationals. Firstly, they have condemned this violence. Many saying they do not understand why it started. They've lived, some saying that they've been here in South Africa for over 10, 15 years, and they've lived harmoniously with the people in KZN. They've never experienced any problems. So they were very excited and welcomed the news that the King will be holding this Imbizo. The locals, Blaine, still mixed views from the locals, and we're hoping that obviously what the King will address his subjects today might bring clarity to the locals. But I must add, very importantly, Blaine, there are a lot of people in KwaZulu-Natal who have said that they do not agree with the violence. They have condemned the violence against foreign nationals. They have been out trying to support the foreign nationals. You know, the camps that have been set set up. People have been coming out in their numbers to give donations and to help out. A lot of people in KZN condemning these attacks.
We've been speaking about these camps over the past couple of days. A lot of foreign nationals complaining about the conditions at the camps. What have you seen?
Well, the conditions are bad, I must say, Blaine. But obviously, I think it's taken the city and the people, the KwaZulu-Natal by surprise. It had to be something that had to be arranged within hours, in fact, because remember, foreign nationals were fleeing to police stations, which were not conducive to house people. So most of them just have marquees. A lot of the foreigners, when they fled their homes, they fled with just the clothes on their backs. Yeah. So they've got nothing to them. So they're sleeping on the floor, Blaine. Abolition facilities are not enough, although the city has tried to put in, I know, chats with as well, but still, I mean, the numbers are growing. 3,000 foreign nationals displaced and are being sheltered at Chatsworth alone, with about 8 abolition facilities. So just the maths there tells you it's not enough for them. But I must say, the organizations that have been coming out, offering aid, they've been trying their best, feeding with delivering clothes and other aid that is needed.
Let's leave it there. Ayanda Mflongo, she's been working hard on the ground, trying to bring us the stories on the ground and what's been happening. We're going to catch up with her a bit later on. She's going to talk to a few role players and a few affected communities. They want to know, will change be afoot post this Imbizo? Let's get more analysis on this. Let me bring in my second guest, Becky Mgomezulu. He's an independent analyst. Becky, thank you very much indeed for your time. This Imbizo, really important.
Yes, indeed. Imbizo is very important for the simple reason that a number of people have been displaced and some of them have been killed in the process. And the fact that we are still not too sure as to why this whole thing started in the first instance. So it's very critical that the king, who has been implicated to have ordered these killings, mistakenly so or correctly so, we are not too sure. We'll just hear from him as to how he views this whole thing and what is his side of the story. So Imbizo is very significant indeed for the country and for the continent.
From your assessment, Dr. Mgomezulu, from what you've seen over the past couple of weeks, do you think government has a handle on the situation?
I must say that I'm particularly concerned about the fact that government may have acted late, but then when it did, in fact, a number of measures have been put in place. You recall, for instance, that the president had to cancel his trip to Indonesia, which was a positive gesture, basically saying that he's concerned about the situation and he cannot leave the country when the country is in crisis. And also for the simple fact that he has also dispatched 3 of his ministers to attend to the issues on the ground. So I must say that on that extent that the government has, of course, taken initiative to try and address the situation, simply because whatever goes wrong paints the government in a bad light and, of course, the country in a bad light. So government has acted. Whether they acted swiftly or not, then it's something we can debate.
Yeah, we've seen the ministers of Home Affairs, State Security, as well as police, and we've seen the president himself here in Chatsworth and Umlazi over the weekend trying to quell the situation, trying to return the situation to normality. You say it's decisive enough?
Yes, I think so, because then it gives hope to the foreign nationals who are currently our victims that they are not left alone. In fact, the mere fact that the president of the country had to cancel his trip and come to address them and address the nation, asking them to calm down and then try to raise whatever issues they have following democratic means, that in itself should count for something. And the fact that the Minister of State Security has been dispatched, the Minister of Home Affairs has been dispatched, so that should count for something. And also the fact that the Minister of Police, who are responsible for bringing the situation into normality, all of those individuals have been dispatched into the province. That shows that government is deeply concerned about the situation, because the ramifications might in fact paint the country in a bad light. So it's very important that government has to act and act decisively.
What would you like the King Goodwill Zwelithini, to say here today?
It's very simple. There have been some accusations that people who are perpetrating these kinds of crime, they are saying that they are doing so because they heed the advice and the call made by King Goodwill Zwelithini. So basically then it looks like his address to Pongolo was misinterpreted by some, and others are using the same address for their own political interests. So then it's very critical for the king to come out clearly and tell the nation what did he say and what did he mean by what he said. So then if those people who are committing these kinds of activities are doing so because the king told them, and then if the king tells them to stop, then of course they should stop.
Independent analyst Dr. Bekim Komazulu, thank you very much indeed for your time. The good doctor is going to be with us for the next couple of hours, unpacking as the day goes on, the day's events. It's unclear exact time when the king takes to the stage and speaks, but as soon as he does, we're going to cut live and bring it all to you, all live on SABC News Channels 404 and also other SABC platforms. So keep it locked on to SABC News for more. But for now, it's back to Johannesburg.
Thank you, Blaine Herman. And Ayan Namshlongo doing the job for us in Durban. As he rightfully said, we will be covering that story as it unpacks. Now, South African leaders are working around the clock with African diplomatic heads of missions to seek an end to the xenophobic attacks that the country is experiencing. International Relations Minister Maite Nkwana Mashabane held a consultative meeting with the diplomats in Pretoria. Home Affairs Minister Malusi Gigaba, State Security Minister David Mahlobo, and Dean of the Diplomatic Corps and DRC Ambassador to South Africa, Ben Mpoko, was also in the meeting. He joins me now in studio to share his thoughts on that meeting and just some of the things that we can do to stop the xenophobia in its tracks. Sir, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us here in Newsroom.
Thank you.
Let's quickly reflect on the meeting this past week. Yourself, very high-profile political leaders, government officials coming together and talking about interventions, ways to stop it, and maybe in many ways also some of the causes.
Yeah, exactly. What came out of the meeting was we went there to interchange, to interact and exchange our views, because some of us have been on the ground. I was in Durban, I visited the victims and so forth and so on. So the purpose of the meeting was to share our views in order, first, to stop the violence, and second, how do we prevent it in the future? We realized that, first of all, when those attacks happened, the government reacted a bit slowly. There was no quick reaction to stop it. So it escalated. It reached a point where from the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, we lost 4 people. 4 people died out of the 7. Secondly, we noticed that there was no intelligence that could have warned the government that these things were going to happen. Thirdly, we realized that we have not learned from the lessons of 2007 and 2008. Because this happened before, but we didn't learn the lessons from those experiences so that we can prevent it from happening in the future. So the purpose of the meeting was also to say, okay, where do we go from here? How do we stop this thing? We recognize the fact that there is the notion of Ubuntu in South Africa, but Ubuntu has remained a political slogan. It's not taught at the grassroots.
Yeah.
There's no education at the grassroots to create a level of tolerance, to develop a caring society within the grassroots in South Africa. It's happening at the political level. As I said, a lot of slogans, but no action on the ground. We also thought the community leaders, church leaders, should be involved in educating the mass in terms of making the South Africa a caring society, a welcoming society. Because as you know, during the apartheid, the whole continent mobilized itself to accommodate South Africans. A lot of the leaders, including Oliver Tambo, they were traveling with the African passports because the apartheid government was not issuing them passports. So when South Africa freed itself from apartheid, we all sang the victory. It was like the continent has won. You see, finally we're all free. But this freedom, if we don't stop this, we're going to start losing it. So we recognize it was a sad day for South Africa, but it was also a sad day for SADC and the continent. Because within the SADC region, we are working on the integration process where the boundaries must collapse. We will not have boundaries. In 2018, we're supposed to have one currency throughout the SADC region. The borders are supposed to disappear. But if we don't accept each other, how are we going to integrate the continent?
Let me just interject there very quickly and talk to you. You talk about the continent. We have seen strong reaction from leaders across the continent condemning these attacks. And yet, I think one of the most amazing things is that this past weekend, various representatives of those countries came together and said that, look, even though it's happening in South Africa, and this is in many ways unprecedented after our democracy, that we all need to work together. Today we're seeing the King addressing in Ibiza, more than 10,000 people expected. How is it important now that we in many ways have this positive message to say that, you know what, we are all unified. It has to stop immediately.
That was the final message at the meeting, that we are Africans, we need to stick together. The reason we defeated colonialism, because we were together. The reason we defeated apartheid, because we stuck together. If we're together, we're strong. Divided, we'll collapse. So the final message is, let's stick together. Let's put our heads together to find a solution for the future so we can prevent this. And then we were appealing to our respective governments to make sure there's no retaliation in our respective countries, because it doesn't help to escalate this thing and then you have a violent reaction from the African countries. We don't want to reach that point. So we have been appealing to our respective government to make sure they calm the population, because we are working together with South African government. We believe, and I believe, the South African government has the capacity to deal with this issue. And now that the leadership, including the president himself, had taken the stand to deal with the issue, we will see the end to it in terms of the current violence. But how do we prevent it from happening in the future? That's the main challenge.
Let's share your thoughts on that very, very quickly, because I do think once we've quelled these attacks happening on foreigners all over the country and stopping and spreading from other parts, how do we make sure that we don't prevent it? That it doesn't flare up again a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now?
Yeah. It's a process of education. We had to start educating the masses that we are one. We're one. We're not, we're one. Secondly, we need to deal with the real issues that are happening like in townships, unemployment and so forth, the criminality and so forth. I'm surprised that it took South Africa 20 years to set up a ministry of small and medium-sized enterprises. I came to this country in 1995, and we were able to establish, with the DT at the time, structures like Kula and then incubation program with the CSR, to start teaching the community how to run a business, a small business, so they can survive on their own. But with DTI being so busy, they didn't concentrate on the small and medium-sized businesses. So I'm glad that finally we have a ministry of a department of medium and small-sized enterprises. That's one thing. But as I said earlier, we need a process of education. The church groups, the community leaders, and so forth. Because when you go to the township, you ask somebody, I'm coming from Mali. You say, where is that? Or I'm coming from Gabon. They don't know where Mali or Gabon, They ask you, is that in Central? The ambassador of Senegal at the meeting was saying, when he was visiting some community, he said, I'm from Senegal. They say, oh, is that in Central Europe? You see, so there is a process of education of our masses, so they know that the people are coming from other parts of the continent. They are just your brothers and sisters.
And we are all African.
Exactly.
So we're going to leave it there. Very inspirational words as from the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps and DRC Ambassador to South Africa, Ben Mpoko, joining us and talking about that high-level meeting that he was part of, that was hosted by the International Relations Minister, Maite Nkwane Mashibane. Okay, let's take a look at your tweets. Please remember to send us your views on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. And it comes, of course, from Pabalo, who says, a little too late for the King's Imbizo, maybe. So very quickly, let me get in, just bring you in there very quickly. A lot of people saying it's too late, but we know that every intervention at this stage is helpful.
It's too late for those who have died, those who have been looted. but it's not too late to prevent it from happening again.
Okay, one from Spilele who says King Zwelithini will host an Imbizo at Mozambique Stadium tomorrow, Monday, as an effort to quell the violence against foreign nationals. We heard Blaine Herman and Ayanda Mlongo doing some coverage for us live from Mozambique. We will be crossing there, of course, during the course of the day. This reactive response by our leaders must come to an end. I thought we learned from Marikana tragedy. What will the Imbizo change now? That comes from Kaiser. And this is our last one from Kumalo, who says, hope the Imbizo shall stop the crimes against humanity. Our joblessness can't justify murder. We shall never bring back the lost lives. And I think that's what the DRC ambassador to South Africa, Ben Mpoko, was saying, that it's too late for those that have been looted, that have lost their lives, but all interventions help. Now, the picture of the day comes from anonymous caption. South Africa face a backlash over these xenophobic attacks on migrant workers. And you can see that it's on your screen right now. Okay, let's now take a look at the front pages from around the globe. In Europe, the International New York Times reveals that in the days just after the German wings disaster last month, Lufthansa's chief executive confidently pronounced that Mr. Lubitsch has been 100% fit to fly, highlighting how little the airline knew of the pilot. Moving to the US Today reports that European officials hold an emergency meeting Monday as they struggle to confront a growing humanitarian crisis following the presumed deaths Sunday of hundreds of people aboard a smuggler's boat from the Libya coast that capsized in the Mediterranean. And also in Israel, the Jerusalem Post leads with that story. The Italian Coast Guard retrieves 28 survivors so far and about 20 bodies, according to the Interior Ministry, after a boat sunk 60 miles off the Libyan coast. Let's take a look at what's happening around the country today. We start in Johannesburg, where former Bafana player Lebohang Marula and two other men are expected to appear in the Boksburg Magistrates Court today for their formal bail hearing. The trio and 7 other men were arrested for allegedly attempting to hijack a cigarette truck earlier this month. Then in Bloemfontein, the Deputy Minister in the Presidency, Buti Manamela, will address around 200 young people at the National Youth Development Agency in Botshabelo today. And in the Eastern Cape, 2 suspects, aged 18 and 20, are expected to appear in the Butterworth Magistrates Court after allegedly raping a 17-year-old girl. Okay, Sun City once again played host to one of the biggest events of the year this weekend. The 21st edition of the South African Music Awards honoured and celebrated the country's top musical talents, with newcomers and pop group sensation Beatenberg walking away with 6 awards for their album The Hanging Gardens. But they were not the only topic that gained much attention. Many artists voiced their views on the current xenophobic attacks around the country.
Please, guys, let's stop killing each other. Say no to xenophobia.
Let's take care of each other. Let's not destroy each other and burn each other down. Let us build each other up.
All we have is each other. So it is really important for us to look at better ways of resolving our problems. This is certainly not the way.
We call on all South Africans, responsible South Africans, to unite against the small minority that are small-minded, to say that we won't be silent about this.
South Africa unite against xenophobia. We need to do away with the senseless killings of, our fellow African brothers and sisters. None of that is going to get us anywhere.
Food for thought, in the words of Ray Davis. Remember, a challenge only becomes an obstacle when you bow to it.
Of dedication and perseverance, Abayani Maitakore made history as one of South Africa's best performing matriculants of 2014, attaining 7 distinctions.
I believe that nothing should stand in your way if you see yourself in the future doing something great. So I just carried on and I never gave up. though the circumstances I faced were challenging, I love challenges. So I was like, yeah, man, bring it on. I can do it.
Join me, Rifiwe Mwiba, on Bophelong, your show about those who take on and conquer life's challenges, every Saturday at 17:30.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. An estimated 10,000 people have started arriving at an Imbizo to be addressed by Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini. The king has been under pressure after his statements on foreign nationals were seen as fueling xenophobic attacks. King Zwelithini has maintained his words were distorted by the media. 3 people are expected to appear in the Alexandra Magistrates Court today for the murder of Mozambican national Emmanuel Sithole. The 35-year-old was stabbed in Alexandra on Saturday and later died in hospital. Police are still searching for a 4th suspect linked to the murder. President Jacob Zuma will aim to douse xenophobic tensions this week. President Zuma will lead a stakeholder outreach program across the country after cancelling a trip to Indonesia for the Africa-Asia Summit. 7 people, including 3 South Africans, have been killed in the latest unrest. 307 have been arrested countrywide. Well, remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Sam, back to you.
Thanks, Indeed. Now, violence related to intolerance does not affect all members of victim groups in the same way. This is why the Mashimanyane Women's Centre has a specific focus on violence against women. Through a right-based approach, the organisation has recently aimed to build the capacity of women who have been affected by xenophobic attacks. Joining us now to tell us more about the work is the Centre's Executive Director, Dr. Leslie Ann Foster. Doctor, good morning and thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
7 killed now, thousands displaced. We've heard some really horror stories. And I think in many ways what's happened over the last couple of weeks, and I know that you're quite active in this field, is one of the reasons behind launching a Women Against Xenophobia.
Yes. We're very concerned about the specific impact that women have in these xenophobic attacks. When men are killed, when the businesses are looted and so forth, there is a way in which it impacts on women that is invisibilized, and that concerns us a great deal. There are many rapes that are happening. There are other forms of brutality against women and girl children, which goes largely unreported. And the reason for that is that because people are undocumented, they don't have recourse to the criminal justice system. In addition, language becomes a problem if they're not able to communicate clearly what the kinds of violence is that they're experiencing. That becomes difficult. But more than that, when men are harmed and killed, they are wives, they are mothers, they are daughters, they are sisters, who feel that impact. So every time a man is killed and he's a breadwinner, that woman and her children are left extremely vulnerable. And we read many stories of that kind of impact. But this campaign is about women taking leadership on the issue. When we discussed it at initial meetings, we found that women are in communities and families, and they have a system of communication that brings forward threats of the violence or the vulnerability of neighbors and so forth. And we're looking at how we form safety networks in communities that women can lead and women can be a part of in a very significant way. We understand that the problem is political, that the response has to be political, economic, and social. And we want to have a say in all of that because as women we have a way in which we can articulate the concerns of women, of families, and of entire communities. And so we want to be able to input into that at all of those levels.
Doctor, one of the things that you mentioned, and I want to touch on it because it sounds right to me, safety networks within communities that women can lead. How do we start those safety networks? Because I do think, when I think a safety network, I think it's a group of people sitting down, talking, and dialogue at the end of the day is going to be one of the ways we are going to resolve some of these issues.
Yes. We have formed a partnership with the Daily Dispatch in East London. I had a meeting with the news editor there, and the one strategy we're going to use is to hold community dialogues jointly, where, one, we report on what is coming out of the communities, what kind of information is coming out, but the community dialogues will also then lead to forums, anti-xenophobic forums at community level, because the response has to come from the ground up as much as what it comes from the political level. And these community dialogues are going to be very important in surfacing what the issues are, in being able to give us early warning systems, and also to then develop those safety networks. So there are many women in communities who are already providing services, and they can provide a service to different things like HIV patients and so forth, but they are the ears and the eyes of the community. And what we want to do is to take the information and the knowledge to the communities so that they then become the leaders within that community to stop xenophobic attacks.
Doctor, I know that you work internationally, but your base is in East London. Talk to me about education of women around their rights and understanding, because for a lot of women that play those leadership roles, it comes naturally, but there are a lot of women that could play leadership roles that don't know they can be leaders.
Yes. Well, one of the things Masimanyane has is a women's leadership program, and we work with young women and then older women. And we run these in communities across the Eastern Cape. But more than that, we are on International Women's Rights Action Watch, and we take this work into Africa. So we're the African focal point for working around women's rights. And we take that. In November, we had 10 African countries come to Cape Town, and we worked with them around how to respond to attacks on women's rights, both practical and political attacks. So it's a very important part of our work, and we also advocate at the AU and the United Nations. But the critical thing here is to teach people what the human rights framework is about, what the responsibilities of the state are, because ultimately the state is responsibility for the safety and protection of its people. And we teach women at the very local level how to hold the state accountable through their local municipalities, their district councils, and so forth.
Very quickly, Doctor, very quick comment from you. We've seen a lot of movement on social media. We're going to, I think at some point, talk to a social media expert around it. But individual people are starting to say, this is wrong. We've seen the hashtags, we are one, all of that. How important is it that we change the context of this conversation? We no longer talk about just xenophobia, but we have to talk about people's rights, and you have to stop violence against your African brothers and sisters.
Yes. Rights is a very important framework to use, and there's the very deep concern at the moment that we're making a shift away from that globally. It's not a South African or African issue. And I think that it's important because it provides us with an international set of norms and standards. That is critical for us to ensure that we respect, that we protect, that we promote, and we fulfill the human rights of every single person. There is no excuse for this kind of violence in any kind of way, and we have to stop it. Every individual has a right, not a right, a responsibility to stop that violence. I took my family over the weekend and said, we have several people, foreign nationals in our community. Just down the street we walk, the shopkeepers, people. I said, what are we going to do? We have to be the ears and the eyes for those people and ensure that they are safe at all times. And go and speak to them. Ask them how they feel about this.
Doctor, we're going to leave it there, but thank you very much for talking to us. Dr. Leslie Ann Foster, who's from the Masimanyane Women's Centre, talking to us just about initiatives that will be launched in the next, well, in actual fact, it has been launched, Women Against Xenophobia. You can Google and find out more about the organisation and this movement. Let's just take a look at your tweets. Please remember to send us your views on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. And this one goes, as a South African and an African child, I apologise to all those affected by xenophobic attacks in South Africa. And that goes at hashtag I am sorry. I'm sure that's how we all feel. Fortune Messina, he works here at the SABC. I've actually seen this gentleman. Hashtag rest in peace Emmanuel Sithole and the many others who have lost their lives in the recent Afrophobia attacks across SA. And then Tibo says, it hurts a lot because everyone matters. Hashtag rest in peace Emmanuel Sithole. And of course, this goes out to the gentleman that was attacked. You would have seen those horrific pictures on the front page of the newspaper. This comes from Siba Piwe, who says, I want to stop seeing these images of Emmanuel Sithole on my feed, Lord. Can we just respect him and his family, though? Quickly, Doctor, from you, and this is what I was talking a little bit earlier before we wrapped it up. These are some strong opinions about xenophobia, that it needs to stop, that we need to be more unified. How do we make sure that it actually filters to the ground?
By working and taking the information and knowledge to local communities. We have to do that. We have to talk to people, we have to have dialogues, we have to have debates, but more than that, we have to put practical support in place. I think we need to have, as I said, the safety nets is to create centers where people can go when they feel under attack. And we need partnerships with the police, with the social development, with health, with all of these role players.
Dr. Leslie Ann Foster, thank you very much. Today's tweet of the day comes from Tibo. Tibo, who says, my spirit weeps at the sight of blood in my beloved country. God, we need you. Please intervene. Can't take it. Hashtag rest in peace, Emmanuel Sithole. Okay, in our second break, we go to President Jacob Zuma's call for xenophobic attacks to come to an end.
What is happening in our country is not acceptable. We condemn this, that people are attacked and killed. We cannot accept that when there are challenges, we then use violence, particularly to our brothers and sisters from the continent. We have said before that when we were in trouble, they helped us to fight our own liberation. They did not chase us away. And therefore it is important for us to bear that in mind. However, we understand the frustration by the people given what has happened. Also given that there are people who are living in the country illegally, but also that in the terms of the small businesses, certain developments have taken place where the people coming from outside seem to have taken control of the small businesses. These are issues, in my view, that need to be discussed among ourselves, find a solution. A few days ago, I made a statement to this effect, that we are aware of the frustrations that the people in South Africa have been voicing. Perhaps as government, we have not been very quick in addressing these issues. I have tasked 3 ministers to address the current issue, but also to go beyond, that we as government have to discuss how do we create a kind of relationship between ourselves and our sisters and brothers who come to South Africa, because we need to have a regulated way that will avoid friction, that will avoid that people should find themselves having to take their frustrations into their hands and therefore take it out to people who are here from outside of the country. It is clear that there is not necessarily a xenophobia, because I've been saying we have stayed with people from outside for many years. We have never had a problem. There must be specific things socially that have developed that led to this, and this is what we need to focus on and deal with the situation so that there will be harmonious staying beyond this. But I would like to convey my condolences as well to the victims and to those who have lost their loved ones. I think this now must stop, because we cannot continue killing one another. As Africans, as people who are belonging to the same continent, we need to find a way. And the government is working hard to find a way where there will be coexistence, properly without depriving people of certain opportunities. These matters must be discussed properly. We have seen the anger. We accept that people were frustrated. We are calling for calm, that we should solve these problems as a government, all of us, together with our brothers and sisters.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom. Thank you for choosing to stay with us now. South Africans have recently taken to social media sites in the fight against xenophobia. Hashtags like hashtag say no to xenophobia and hashtag xenophobia must fall has been used to call for calm and to end the ongoing violence. To give us the latest, we are joined by ROI Africa's Managing Director, Tanya Curry. Tanya, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us here on Newsroom. Let's start by talking about just everybody on social media in one way or another using a hashtag, talking about their emotions, how strongly they feel about what's going on in the country at the moment.
It's huge. I mean, from a media monitor's perspective, it is astonishing how the whole chart just gets taken over by the xenophobic sentiment. And also, for the first time for social media, for me, hashtags actually make a difference because we have a voice now and a vehicle. So we've been having a look at news and social media across South Africa firstly. So this is local, Sam. So on the left of your screen, you'll see that xenophobia is the black section of the pie at the bottom, and it's taken over the chart by an excess of 40%. This is news reporting. So this is what you are feeding us as consumers at home. So that's against other big stories like the DA's, Helen Zilla's resignation, Eskom, City Power's load shedding initiative, statues completely falling off the charts now that we have something really, really big to worry about. And then when we swap that statistic back to here at home, where you and I are talking on social networks, it is incredible to see that in excess of 60% of our conversation in the past 7 days is about the xenophobic essay. It's crazy.
Well, let's talk about stats around that very quickly. What is the number we're talking about in terms of anti-xenophobic tweets? People rising up again and saying, look, we have a responsibility. How many of those tweets are we seeing or interactions?
It's like shooting a moving target. Like if I give you an answer now, the next second it'll change. But what I can tell you is that it's crept across almost 100 countries across the globe. Wow. South Africa is very much in the spotlight in both news and social networks. If we look a little bit lower down on the screen, on the left-hand side, those are statistics from international news across the world. And we've got big stories internationally, the US presidential election, all that sort of thing. Xenophobia accounting for over 1 in every 10 articles reported internationally across 100 countries. And that talks about us here at home.
We saw President Zuma asking the National Assembly that social media users not incite violence on social media platforms. What have we seen in reaction to that statement?
I've seen very much a peaceful sentiment or a strong no from the South African people and from Africans across the continent and also across the world. People expressing dismay, shock. Very little is actually pushing the xenophobic attacks itself. But there are some. I think social media is predominantly dominated by negative sentiment, but that's because we're angry and we're fighting against it.
Do we have some kind of sense in terms of the amount of pictures that's been sharing? I've seen some horrific pictures, and I think I've gone as far as blocking some people who've been sending me pictures on social media.
I think one of the scary things is how social media is never vetted. So you often see these old stories resurface, or stories that aren't even related to our country or to this issue, surface on social media as part of the xenophobic attacks. One particular story was that one back from 2008, those horrific images that were seen of a man on fire, that came through again as part of this wave of xenophobic attacks. So the problem with social media, can't be vetted, can't be stopped. So it is what it is.
Tanya Curry, thank you very much for joining us here. She's from ROI. She's the Africa Managing Director, sharing some insights in social media and kind of the trends that people are falling into, or the patterns as well. Okay, now a community meeting meant to resolve the impasse at a trouble-torn Ledig area near Sun City has failed to yield positive results in efforts to resolve ongoing disputes. The rampant community members, led by the tribal leaders, want answers on the alleged missing millions that were paid as royalties into the tribal account by the mining companies operating in their area. They have disregarded an agreement reached earlier this week with delegates from the provincial government to stop the protests. The situation in Ledig area near Sun City in the northwest is said to be relatively calm but tense. For the whole of last week, SABC reporter Cholofelo Matabidi has been on the story, and he joins us now from our Mahikeng studios. Cholo, thank you very much for joining us. Give us a sense of things in the Mahikeng area, and kind of what are the things that you're looking out for?
Yeah, generally, what I've been looking out for the whole week is the situation in Ledig. I was called to Ledig on Sunday, so I spent like a week in Ledig. Initially, when we got there, we were told, or we heard from the community, that the issue of concern is that 3 weeks before they undertook a march to Sandton, to Musa, a company called Musa Capital Offices, where they were going to inquire about, monies that the community is owed, money that is coming from royalties from mining companies. But to their surprise, they say that when they got there, the directors at Musa Capital said that they didn't know the community. They had nothing to do with the community. That's when they came back, they decided to then plan and then finally, starting from last week Sunday, execute what has been happening in Ledig, where it was blockages on a daily basis, run-ins with the police. Schools, even when schools reopened on the 13th, for the whole week, students were not going to school. So it was just a whole situation where the community was saying that all we need is the funds, or what we believe is ours, the monies that we're supposed to be geared towards development, geared towards ensuring that we get water, because Ledig doesn't have constant water supply. They say that those are the issues that they believe the monies that were paid out from the royalties was supposed to help in ensuring that they get water, in ensuring that they get better roads. So that was the situation in a nutshell in Ledig when we touched base last week, Sunday.
Tolo, now, obviously we're happy that you're in one piece, but how have you managed to stay out of trouble in what has been a tension-filled area? Well, it's been tension-filled all over South Africa.
At one point it was very dangerous because under the cover of darkness, you'd find a group of youths peddling stones at moving vehicles and even petrol bombs. There was a situation or an incident where, 3 ladies that were traveling in a bakkie, they were on their way from church and they were passing, and because all the lights in the community had been broken so that the mob can operate under the cover of darkness. And that bakkie was then subsequently pelted with stones and petrol bomb thrown at those 3 ladies. One of them was burned slightly because of the fumes from the petrol bomb and all of that. So that was actually the situation, because and you cannot when you monitor the situation, you cannot run away from the fact that there might be elements of criminality when you look at Cholo,
yes,
Sam?
Yeah, unfortunately we've run out of time. We will continue this conversation. That's SABC reporter covering things for us in Sun City, in northwest villages of Liedig. He's also sharing his thoughts on just some of the issues that's been happening in that part of the country. Well, this is Newsroom. It's broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. We also stream live on YouTube at that time with the show available on demand on your YouTube channel. We love interacting with you. From us, it's a wrap.
Welcome to Network, a technology news program that also discusses what's trending